Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. We have a great show. We're going to talk about Jacksonville. We're going to talk about Florida multifamily on the broker world and how brokers can help you find deals, how they can help you exit out of deals, reposition deals. Please welcome Steven McAdoo. Steven is a managing partner of Seven Bridges Realty Group. He guides clients through the investment life cycle by sourcing opportunities, advising on portfolio management to maximize value, and identify favorable conditions to dispose or refinance assets. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me. Happy to talk about the market and any information that might be helpful to your listeners.
Yeah, a lot of my investor friends, some of them live in Florida, but a lot of them invest in Florida. Seems to be one of the hottest markets out there right now. In multifamily and single family Airbnb, it seems very you're getting so many people moving to Florida right now, and Jacksonville it appears to have tons of job growth as well. So I mean, it's just kind of been like a boom for years, year over year, and it doesn't seem to be stopping even with interest rates and things. It's great that kind of your specialty is you're working with 20 to 70, 80 unit type of apartments. Are you mostly working on the list side or a combination of list and the buyer side or whatever comes your way?
Yeah. A lot of stuff that I do tends to be off market. I would say let's see if I had to give a percentage of what I've done that's actively marketed versus off to date. It's probably been 80% of it hasn't been actively marketed. Really kind of matchmaking. I've got people reaching out all the time, giving me kind of criteria of what they're looking for. Obviously I put them in my database, and then I've got seller, I've got pretty copious notes on sellers over, the last couple of years since I started this, of what their units are renting for, what their plan is, if they would sell, if they would, what they would need to make it work. So a lot of that is just kind of matchmaking behind the scenes and figuring out, I would say manufacturing deals by just making those connections and thinking about who's a would-be seller, and if I have the right buyer at the right time, and just piecing those together. But yeah, we focus on the mid-market space. We're doing stuff that's kind of smaller than institutional deals. We're not competing with brokerage like CBRE and Cushman & Wakefield, those other firms generally. But we're also not trying to compete with residential realtors selling, really small stuff. We're trying to be in that mid space that's kind of, I would say a little more fragmented. There's really not usually a lot of, competitor, or I would say dominant, brokers that work that mid-market space. And so that's what we are focusing all of our efforts on, is really capturing those deals. And those deals, I feel it's an interesting space to work in, because you typically are dealing with oftentimes less sophisticated buyers and sellers. I think there's potentially more opportunity there in a lot of times than looking at much larger deals where maybe you've already got a sophisticated owner in a really professional property management company in place, and maybe there's not as much operational upside as there is on maybe a 24 unit deal that's been managed by a longtime owner, low rents, no good systems and processes in place, and somebody else who's young, hungry, coming in and really thinking about how they can extract value out of that property, I think has a much better shot of finding deals with a profile like that, rather than, some of those larger deals. I feel like at this point, trying to go after, 150 plus unit deals and really finding something that's been like mismanaged or that's, I think, tough to do, especially in more primary markets than tertiary. So, but anyway, that's a little bit of background about us and what we focus our efforts on, and the types of transactions we do.
Prior to the brokerage side, you did some work with the development company. Is that kind of your background prior to this?
Yeah. So my background's actually in accounting. I went to school for accounting, which was a horrible mistake. I spent the first few years of my career trying to get out of accounting, and I knew I wanted to get involved in commercial real estate in some aspect, but I wasn't sure what. And my entry point was when a recruiter called me and told me about this young development firm that had an opening. They needed somebody that could do their accounting and finance stuff, but since I was essentially their first employee, I'd have a shot at kind of doing a little bit of everything. So when I got in there, I really just got thrown in quickly to underwriting, asset management, investor relations. I was doing a little bit of everything. Some was like really lower than what I was qualified to do, and some was way more than I was probably qualified to do, but it was like a really wide range. But that really gave me a good background in looking at deals, learning about markets, talking with, I would talk to, lenders, brokers. I was going on property tours. I was doing a little bit of everything. And so that was really, really good for me. And so I was with them for about 4 years, and my wife and I decided that we were going to move back to Jacksonville, which is our hometown. And that I had always thought about going to brokerage, and I finally figured it was a better time than ever to jump in and go after it. And so I did, and kind of knew that I wanted to specialize in multifamily, but wasn't really sure what segment of the market I wanted to carve out. And I just found that it was the space that I gravitated towards most, just because, like I said, I thought it was the mid-market space is the best combination of scale and opportunity in terms of, maybe finding some properties that you can really extract value from. So that's a little bit about how I got to, where I am now.
What advice would you have for, let's say they're doing well with the real estate investing business. Now they're kind of the move uppers, right? They're young, hungry, maybe not young, but hungry. They have a decent portfolio of smaller, fourplexes, maybe a couple sixplexes, and they're looking for that 20, 30, 40 unit property. How do you like to work with these type of buyers? What do you think the best way to get them? I know you probably have a large database, and when you get an opportunity, you probably label each one, based on their criteria, and then kind of figure it out. But what advice to somebody that's looking to, make connections with a guy like you who can potentially serve up a nice opportunity to them, right? And how do you stay on top of your radar, and what kind of buyers are you looking at, or sponsors are you looking for?
Yeah. So I would say, man, I could talk about this for an hour, because I've got a lot of advice that I would give to people starting out, or maybe they've done some small deals and now they're looking to get into the small multifamily space. But I think that for one, you need to think about the fact that whenever you start calling brokers, they're going to immediately, brokers get a lot of calls from prospective buyers, and because time is money, they're really quickly trying to assess whether somebody makes sense to focus their efforts on or not. And a lot of times brokers are going to ask things like, have you ever, first of all, have you done deals previously? If so, where at? What did they look? What types of deals were they? What types of deals are you looking for? And they're going to start assessing your history. And so I would say that any broker probably wants to see, okay, have you done deals in this market? Have you done deals in this state? Have you done deals at all? Where does your capital come from? Those are the sorts of the things they're going to probably inquire of you to really determine if it makes sense to start investing any time or energy into having those conversations and going more that, because the more stuff that a broker sends out and they start putting in front of people, they know that a lot of times they're going to get a lot of comments and questions back. So if you start sending out a deal, and I used to wonder that before I got into the profession myself, what broker wouldn't just send out everything to everyone all the time? And it's because it's just a lot of work. When you're taking questions and a person says, hey, well, what do you think the rents are on this? What do you think about this line item? It's hard to do that when you send out one deal to 100 people. So usually brokers do it in a way that's sort of like, okay, I'm going to go to my best, 10 people, then I'm going to send to the next 100 people. Then I'm just going to blast it out to everybody and see what sticks, or, they might have some sort of methodology about how they're going about sending this stuff out. But I think that you've got to, when you first make that initial call to a broker, think about them and why that broker would want to spend a lot of time getting to know you and talking about deals with you and giving them a sense that you're actually serious. One thing I wouldn't do, and I have people do this, they'll call me up. They've never even they don't know a lot about Jacksonville. They never even explored the market. They want to really they saw Jacksonville on some best of or high rent growth lit or something, and they want to start asking really, I can tell they haven't really done any homework at all, and they're looking for me to sort of start to give them. And I don't think that's a good approach either. You want to show somebody that you're already serious. Maybe you've already started looking at some deals, like, hey, I just saw this, trade. What did you think about that? We've been looking at eyeing this market for a while. Just giving the broker the sense that you're serious, whether you've done projects on your own that they can then see that you've got experience and track record, or maybe you're partnering with somebody that does. But I think that is one of the first things, is just always think, I need to sell myself to this broker first so that they take me seriously. And then when they do start sending me stuff, I'm going to give them, feedback quickly. If a deal doesn't work for me, that's fine, but I need to tell them why it doesn't work. Because that's I think the biggest pet peeve from every broker is you start to send out stuff. People are like, hey, send me what you got, send me what you got, send me what you got. You send it out to them, you get nothing back. Or, hey, sorry, this one doesn't work for us. Why doesn't it work? So you want to start to, get those things. And I think when the feedback is actually useful and informative, and somebody's actually thoughtful, and you can tell they've looked at the deal, then you start to think, okay, this person's actually really looking, they're really doing their homework, and they're really, actually, they're a real player here. And I think the second thing that I would say is, I would suggest to everybody looking to break into a new market to go, because of what you described. The longer a broker's been in a market, they generally have a really long list of preferred buyers. They might have 10 guys that are really strong. They're their go-to guys. They know once a deal comes across their desk, the second a seller says, yeah, I might be interested, they're calling that person up. And, so it's difficult as a new investor, or an investor in a new market, to pierce that, maybe established broker's top 10. I would say find the young, hungry broker that doesn't have a built up, he doesn't have an established, client list yet. He doesn't have a list of buyers. And if you can find that guy, and he's young, he's hungry, and you can get him on the phone and say, hey, listen, I know you probably don't have a big, buyers list yet. I know you probably don't. You're talking to sellers every day, and sometimes you're unable to get a rent roll or certain things out of them. I'm okay with, if you can get, general sense of rents, and we can start piecing together some information about the operations of the property. I'm okay with making, throwing in an LOI, knowing that we may not have all the information we need, but we can see if that gets some traction. And I think that a lot of young brokers would say, hey, that's if I have an investor like that who's willing to work with me and know that I won't always have control over these deals, and I won't be able to get perfect information, but maybe, we can mutually benefit each other, because I can then get some traction with the seller if I can present, an LOI to them that's reasonable, that they'll actually, consider, and they won't laugh at. But it'll at least maybe get some traction. And then who knows, if we do get traction on that, then, you got first shot at the deal. Whereas, like I said, this other broker that's got an established list of, investors, you're not going to have that. So that would be a recommendation that I would just say is find talk to multiple brokers, but try to find that young, hungry guy that just doesn't have an established database yet, and try to just work with them and say, hey, listen, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is my criteria. Like, we can literally scrub the county records or CoStar or whatever and come up with a list, and you can confidently call and say that, hey, I have somebody that specifically wanted me to call on every property with this criteria, and I wanted to have this conversation with you. And I think that you can start kind of, manufacturing some activity that way, and having that relationship with a broker in a new market, and start generating some opportunities. But anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. That's great feedback. So, like, kind of on what you're doing really is you're playing off market matchmaker, because that's really where the opportunity is, and most of these operators, sellers, or maybe they're getting to the point where they want to retire, and you're finding that right seller who probably doesn't do a good job on his books, probably keep rents are under market, and then if you're able to present a reasonable LOI, this deal never hits the market, and you can potentially get a good value deal, a value add play. And most of the up and coming investors in this space want value add, right? Because that's how they're going to create net worth and cash flow. So it's kind of, I mean, you what you're doing is very difficult work, essentially.
Yeah. It's a lot of throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. You've got to start generating a lot of activity, making a lot of calls, sending out letters, just starting these conversations. And it's just a long game. A lot of times you have this initial conversation with an owner and nothing much comes of it. And, a couple months later you say, hey, I saw one of your units for rent. See, you're pushing rents to, so-and-so, what do you, and then they kind of open up a little bit more. And then maybe that, you send them over something to take a look at, and you kind of like snowball this relationship over sometimes, a couple of years, since I've been doing that. I know some brokers worked on owners for, years and years before they finally, they got that call one day and said, hey, I'm finally ready. That actually happened to me recently. I had this guy in California, and I kept, every now and then I'd say, hey, would you look at an offer yet? Hey, would you look at an offer yet? Hey, I have a, 1031 exchange buyer. Hey, I have, just finding a reason to check in, kind of keeping them informed of what's going on with the market, almost to the point of being like a pest. But the guy just randomly reached out to me about a month ago and said, hey, I've enjoyed, all the conversations and the everything that we've had in the past, really mainly through text. I'm going to be in town. Do you want to talk about, we're thinking about liquidating the portfolio. Do you want to meet up and talk about it? And so that's how these things happen. I mean, whether you're a broker or you're an investor and you're going direct to seller and you're doing that kind of stuff too, you just have to have a system, database, a CRM, where that's going to be a long game. You're not going to just, it's not like, I think wholesaling houses, like some of these guys who have done smaller stuff, think that you blast out a bunch of letters, you get a bunch of calls, and then some of them work, some of them don't. It's kind of like, it is like that, but it's just much longer, right? Like the life cycle is like you're doing those things, but it's just like massaging that deal, over a course of like a long period of time, until finally the owner, something happens, maybe something changes in their personal life, maybe something changes with the property, and then finally, you get that call one day and they say, hey, like, you're top of mind because you've reached out, 12, 16, 20 times, and they're like, hey, this guy's been hounding me forever. I'll at least give him the first shot, and if it works out with him, cool. If not, then I'll but staying top of mind, I think, whether you're a broker or you're an investor, and just kind of constantly doing these drips where people are aware of what you're doing, and hopefully when the time does come to take some action, you're the first person they think of.
Yeah, one of my buddies is he's like the top small middle market broker in California, and he's been for years. Younger guy too, and but he always says he says he still locks himself in his office and makes calls. That's all he does. He's just and he's just built a name. I mean, he sells. I don't know. He clears over $3 million in gross commission every year for like the last couple of years. I mean, it's just California real estate, and incredible, but it's a very tenacious business that you guys are in, and I think investors sometimes take that for granted, like all the work that the broker or the investment salesperson is doing, and they don't really get in the mind of like, that person, right? They just think, oh, I want deals. Well, think about the person that's been messaging this seller for 16, 20 times, right? You've put in more time than this investor is probably going to put in on the property.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny you say that too, because I think a lot of times, and it's easy to do, it's kind of like the way, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of times somebody will be like, I can't believe I'm paying this broker this fee, whether you're a seller or a buyer. Like, I can't, like, they look at the fee on the closing statement, just shake their head, but they don't realize like how much time went into that. It's the same way, like when you get your invoice from an attorney and it's like, $600, $700 an hour or something like that. And you're thinking this is insane, but you're not like considering all the time that they had to put into schooling. Like, you send them over a thing and they like take, an hour redlining something and you get this huge bill, but it's like, it's not the work they did. It's all the work they had to do to get the knowledge to be able to perform that service.
We say that all the time. I'm in the lending business, also an investor, but sometimes I like, I hear myself in the back of my mind, like wanting to give this guy a discount, or like, why would I give this guy a discount? It's like, I spent 24 years in real estate. I'm 44. I've been in real estate in some capacity for 24 years. I have a lot of experience in what I do. And yeah, I think investors out there, and I'm, talking because I have both hats as the lender and sometimes an investor, that, you got to realize that one good broker relationship could be a game changer for that investor, right? That could be millions of dollars in future, equity and cash flow. Like, one deal, because really one of these good multifamily deals could pay you cash flow for literally the rest of your life, ongoing, and create such. So I think like a lot of investors don't really understand that. They're in it like, I need it now. I'm going to do this, and everything is automation and this and that, where you do need systems, but you also got to remember that, I think the deals are done really with the relationships. That's the key. And knowing that, like for you want to know that you're dealing with somebody, whether they're newer, but they're sophisticated enough to be able to close on deals. They know how to structure stuff. They know how to get things done versus, like I just spent a lot of time working with some newer investors trying to help them finance some properties. And it was just a nightmare because they're not yet conditioned. Like, hey, when you get conditions, you got to get them back to the underwriter right away. Like, this is real. And then when it doesn't close on time or there's problems at the end because of you. So it's like, you got to kind of condition these investors, and like some of them get it right away and some of them never get it, and they never really get good at investing because, like I've gotten most of my good deals, either direct marketing to sellers or, because of my relationships. Mm-hmm. That's where you get the good deals. Once in a while you can find one that hits the market, but that's rare, and especially in the market today.
Yeah.
Hi, if you'd like to book a call with me and discuss SBA financing, whether it's a 7A or 504, or you just don't know where to start, maybe it's a startup business, you're buying an existing business, you're buying a franchise, you're building a new office building, you want to expand your existing business, we have multiple solutions. I can walk you through the 7A and the 504 and the SBA loan process. And if you have any other questions on any other types of financing, I'm happy to book a call with you. The link's below. Look forward to seeing you soon. Have you guys seen any softening at all, or not? Or is it stronger now than ever? Does it
it's funny you asked that. I just had breakfast with a friend in the business, and I, for the past couple of weeks, have been trying to talk to as many lenders, other brokers, investors as I can, because I'm sure, in your world, it's the same thing. Is are literally changing day by day right now. And it's like trying to stay on top and hear about what's happening and what's changing is, it's like if you don't, check in with people for like a week, you feel like you're like way out of the loop. So I would say right now it's too early to say. Everything that's changed with rates over the past couple months, obviously it's going to have some sort of effect. What effect that is, I don't know. I mean, I know we're not going to continue just to, chugging along like nothing happened. Sorry.
That's okay.
Somebody, yeah.
Hey, that
Home, my dog's I guess must have heard somebody.
Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Amazon or UPS
So,
every day.
Steve, you have the. Do you guys have a podcast called the Jacksonville Multifamily Podcast? Are you active with that, or is that?
Yeah. We do. We have an episode that comes out every Wednesday that you can take a listen to. That we try to cover these things. But to your point, just to touch on the last thing, yeah, we basically or to touch on are we seeing things changing, softening? People are definitely changing. I mean, how they're looking at deals, how they're thinking about putting them together. I will say I talked to the director of a large firm here, and he told me that, he hasn't seen any pricing changes yet, but he is seeing a thinning of the herd in terms of competing offers for actively marketed deals. He said if, a year ago it was 19 or 20 offers coming in, he's maybe seeing 5 or 6 now. So I think that some of the buyers out there that, depending on what their motivations were and what their structure was, and whatever they needed to make deals work, they just can't compete right now. And I think probably there's some groups out there that maybe are cash heavy. Maybe they can put more equity into deals to make the numbers pencil, and it's not having as much of an effect, and they're still saying, well, now this is great, we're still want to buy deals, there's less competition. And I think there's still so much demand that it's going to take a lot more in terms of rate increases before we see any like real softening in the market, even if things kind of maybe temporarily just take a little bit of a pause. But anyway, back to your point. We have a podcast, Seven Bridges Realty Group. You can find us, you can find our information, and anything that if you ever want to reach out and just talk about the market in Northeast Florida or just multifamily in general, feel free to reach out. And I'd love to talk to anybody that might be interested in learning about the market here.
Well, I appreciate your time. This was very insightful, and it's good to get a perspective from on the brokerage side versus the investor side, just a little bit different, but at the same time, you're the one that's making it happen, finding these off-market opportunities and connecting, being an ultimate matchmaker. So thank you. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks everyone.